It was supposed to be just another late-night interview, lights on, cameras rolling, scripted laughs. But beneath Will Smith's charming grin, something else was brewing, a need to break the silence, to expose what he thought was weakness. Keanu Reeves, calm as ever, walked onto that stage with a quiet presence that unsettled more than applause could calm. No one expected the question Will would ask, and even fewer were prepared for the answer Keanu gave. "Oh, and before we continue, tell us, what's your favorite Keanu Reeves movie of all time? Let us know in the comments." The studio of the talk show Face to Face was a marvel of modern production. Backlit glass panels glowed with shifting hues of violet and blue, giving the set an almost cathedral-like aura. Everything from the cream leather armchairs angled for intimacy to the discreet overhead lights that shimmered like stars had been crafted for this very moment. A special episode, two giants of Hollywood, one unforgettable conversation. But behind the glitz, behind the rehearsed applause and countdowns, there was something else in the air, something unspoken, something volatile. Helena Cortez, the show's host and one of the most respected journalists in American media, checked her earpiece backstage. She had interviewed presidents, scientists, artists, and exiled rebels, but night, her pulse was faster than usual. There was a weight to this pairing, Will Smith and Keanu Reeves, that even she couldn't fully predict. She stepped onto the stage just as the floor manager gave her the go-ahead. 30 seconds. Helena, we're living nationwide. She nodded, smoothed down her suit jacket, and took her position under the spotlight as the theme music swelled. The countdown echoed through the studio in 5, 4, 3, 2, cue the lights, cue the audience, cue the moment. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," Helena greeted the crowd, her voice calm but vibrant. "Tonight's Face to Face is something special. We're joined not just by two of the biggest names in Hollywood, but by two men who've shaped generations, not just with their art but with their choices, their silences, and their words." The audience clapped with anticipation. First, a man whose name is synonymous with charisma, resilience, and box office gold. He's met fame head-on with courage, with laughters, and sometimes with controversy. Please welcome Will Smith. The crowd erupted. The familiar beat of "Getting Jiggy with It" pulsed through the speakers as Will Smith entered the stage with his signature energy. He danced a little, high-fived. Someone in the front row gave Helena a quick hug and sat down, smiling with the confidence of a man who's been owning stages for decades. Helena waited for the cheers to die down before continuing. "And now a man who's become a mystery, Ameth, a quiet revolution in Hollywood. He doesn't chase the spotlight, but somehow it always finds him a symbol of quiet strength and artistic integrity. Please welcome Keanu Reeves." The music shifted, more subtle, more introspective. Keanu walked in slowly, dressed in black from head to toe, a simple t-shirt, a worn jacket, jeans, a silver crucifix hung loosely from his neck. He nodded politely to Helena, then offered Will a firm, silent handshake. Will give him a friendly pat on the shoulder. But there was something in his eyes, a glimmer of challenge, of something more than just show banter. Keanu noticed but said nothing. Helena gestured for them to take their seats facing each other in twin armchairs with a small table between them. "Will Keanu welcome?" she said, her tone warm but firm. "Tonight, this is your space, no filters, no scripts, just conversation the world is listening to." The lights dimmed slightly. The camera zoomed in, and the air thickened with expectation. Will leaned back, still smiling. "Man, I've always wanted to share a stage with you," he said to Keanu. "You've got this whole Hollywood monk with a shotgun thing going, like nobody knows if you're going to quote Nixa or start a slow-motion gunfight." The audience laughed. Keanu gave a small smile. "We all break something," he said softly. "Even when all we're trying to do is listen." Will raised an eyebrow, surprised. Not the usual late-night soundbite, but he rolled with it. "Can I be real?" he asked, sitting forward. Keanu nodded once Will paused, for effect, then said, "You ever think your career could have been way bigger if you weren't Sodom slow?" Gasps, then silence. Even Helena's eyebrows lifted. Keanu didn't flinch, not even a blink. He just tilted his head slightly as if that question had been waiting in the air between them all along, and now it had finally landed. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few nervous chuckles tried to break the tension but failed. Keanu took a breath. His voice, when it came, was low, controlled. Not angry, not defensive. Just centered. "What you call slow, I call presented." Hit like a whispered thunderclap. Will blinked, "Present, yeah." Keanu said, "Being here fully, not chasing the next contract or the next headline, just being alive." The crowd murmured. Someone clapped, then stopped halfway. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. Will shifted in his seat. One leg crossed over the other. "That's deep, bro. But Hollywood doesn't pay you to be present, it pays you to perform." "I stop moving, I disappear." Keanu nodded slowly. "What happens when you disappear from yourself?" The question stopped Will mid-breath. Elena glanced at her notes. This wasn't on the agenda. Will laughed, but it was strained. "Listen, I don't run away. I show up, I deal with things. I don't hide behind metaphors and moody silences." Sometimes, Keanu said, silence is the hardest confrontation of all. Will opened his mouth, then closed it for the first time. The smile faltered. The audience was no longer laughing, they were listening. Helena leaned in gently. "Keanu, you seem comfortable with discomfort. Has that always been the case?" "No," he answered. "I learned it. I lost a lot. My sister, river time, joy. I disappeared from everything before I learned how to stay." Will frowned slightly. "You disappeared," Keanu nodded. "Not because I couldn't face the world, but because I needed to hear something." Quieter than the room held its breath. Keanu Reeves leaned in slightly, his voice calm but weighted with intent. "There's something in need to ask you." Will blinked, the cocky grin fading just enough to betray a flicker of uncertainty. "Okay," he said cautiously, "go ahead." Keanu didn't ask right away. He looked at Will not as an opponent but as a mirror. The silence stretched, not uncomfortably, but deliberately. Then he spoke. "Why did you really want this interview?" Will exhaled sharply, almost laughing. "Man, and what I mean. Come on, it's TV, it's good ratings, you and me on a couch, that's gold." Keanu just kept looking at him steady. Patient Will glanced briefly at the audience, searching for support in the familiar rhythm of performance, but the laughter had stopped. The energy had shifted. "All right," Will added, shifting in his seat. "If you're fishing for something deep, fine. Maybe I thought it'd be interesting. Two icons, different philosophies, a contrast." Keanu tilted his head. "Or maybe you needed something." Will paused. Something in his jaw tightened. Helena observed silently, eyes flicking between them, hands still over her cards, but unused. She knew now this was no longer her show. "Okay, Monk," Will said with a chuckle that didn't reach his eyes. "What do you think?" It needed. Keanu didn't answer with assumptions. Instead, he reflected the question back gently, but without retreat. "That's what I'm wondering, Will. What part of you thought I was the one you had to face?" The audience stirred. Will leaned back, arms crossed, a defensive posture. "You've got this image, man. Untouchable, mysterious, like people project all this holiness onto you. Meanwhile, I've had my mess live streamed to the world." Keanu nodded slowly. "I know, and I'm sorry you had to go through that." Will wasn't expecting compassion. It disarmed him more than any retort could, but Keanu continued. "The world doesn't love me because I'm silent. They love me because I stopped performing." Will looked down. Something flickered across his face, something close toward cognition. "You think I'm performing right now?" Keanu didn't answer directly. Instead, he told Astri there was a fan. He said maybe 10 years. ago, he stopped me outside a bookstore. He looked tired, hollow. He didn't ask for a photo. He just said, "Your movies helped me survive my brother's death." And then he said, "You taught me I didn't have to kill myself." The air in the studio turned dense. Will swallowed. Even Helena looked stunned. "I didn't say anything to him," Keanu went on. "I just hugged him." We stood there for maybe a minute in silence. That moment said more than 1,000 interviews. Will sat back, eyes focused somewhere far beyond the studio. "That kind of pain, I know it," he said quietly. "But I had to keep going, keep making noise, keep being Will Smith." Keanu gave him space. Sometimes noise keeps us from hearing what's breaking. Will looked to him this time with no performance in his gaze. "So you just went away after your sister?" Keanu nodded. "I didn't want to live in a world that could take her from it, but you came back," Will pointed out. "You still made movies, still played heroes." Keanu looked up because he realized silence isn't escape, it's preparation. Will frowned. "Preparation for what?" Keanu answered without blinking. "The truth." A low murmur rolled through the audience. Will let the words hang, then leaned forward. "You want truth, all right?" The energy shifted again. Will's voice sharpened. Not with aggression, but with a kind of weary defiance. "You talk about silence like it's holy, but I didn't get that luxury. I didn't disappear when the world came for me. After my mistakes, my breakdowns, I had to stand there. Take it, apologize, rebuild you. You vanish, then reappear like a saint with a beard and sad eyes." Keanu didn't flinch. "And that makes you angry?" Will stared at him, and then unexpectedly laughed. "But this time it was bitter." "I guess it does." Silence. Then Keanu spoke again. "Maybe because you think the only way to earn love is to suffer publicly." Will's eyes narrowed. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "You think love comes from applause?" Keanu continued. "But applause fades, it always fades." Helena finally spoke. "But don't seek validation in some form." Keanu turned to her. "Gently, validation is like sugar, it gives you a rush. But presence, that nourishes." The audience was silent now, not in boredom, but reverence. Will looked tired for the first time, not physically, but emotionally. "You know what, man," he said, voice softer now. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed quiet more. Maybe people wouldn't hate me so much." "People don't hate you," Keanu said. "They just don't know how to hold your pain." Will looked at him, then looked away. "And what about you?" he asked. "What do you do with your pain?" Keanu sat with the question. His eyes didn't waver. "I don't fight it. I sit with it. I walk with it. Some days it walks me." Will was silent. The audience too, even the camera operators barely breathed. Then Keanu leaned forward. "Can I ask you something else?" Will nodded. "Barely. What would happen if you stopped being Will Smith for just one night?" Will didn't answer. Jaw clenched, his eyes were glossy now. But he fought the tears. Keanu didn't press, he just sat there, still present. And somehow that silence was louder than anything Will had ever heard. Will tried to say something, but before he could, Keanu raised his hand again, just slightly. "There's one more thing I need to know," he said. Will looked up, bracing. Keanu's voice dropped to a whisper, but it echoed like thunder. "Who are you when no one's clapping?" Keanu Reeves leaned in, eyes calm but unflinching. "Why did you really want this interview?" Will smirked, trying to keep control. "Come on, man, it's ratings. 2 legends, 1 couch. It's good TV." Keanu didn't blink. "No, there's something more." Will shifted uneasy. "The crowd sensed it too, all right. Maybe I wanted contrast," he said, loud and quiet. "Fire and water." Keanu tilted his head. "Or maybe you needed to confront something in me. Or in you." Will looked away, then back. "You know what I hate," he muttered, "that people worship. You're calm, you barely speak, and they act like you're some enlightened guru." Keanu remained still. "And that bothers you?" Will snapped back. "Hell yeah, it does. I've bled for my applause, worked, grinded, suffered loudly. You just exist and somehow they love you more for it. Keanu responded, gently. Maybe they're not. Loving me, maybe. They're loving the space I leave for them to see themselves. Will paused. Something broke in his expression. You ever feel like you're running just to stay visible all the time? Keanu said, until I stopped. Will scoffed. Easy for you to say. You disappeared. You had the luxury of silence. I stayed, took the hits, owned my scandals, and did that bring peace? Will didn't answer. Keanu's voice softened. I've lost people too, River. My sister. I didn't vanish because I was enlightened. I vanished because I was grieving. Will looked at him truly. Looked, and the silence helped. No, at first it swallowed me. But eventually it became a place I could hear my own voice again. Will sat back, almost whispering. I don't know what mine sounds like anymore. Keanu leaned. And that's why we're here. Will blinked, emotions rising. I came to expose you, make you crack, but all I've done is crack open. Maybe that's the point, Keanu said. Will's voice cracked. You don't understand. And I need the noise, the loft track, the love. Keanu nodded. We all need love. But if it only exists when you're performing, is it love or applause? That question landed hard. Will looked down. You think I'm still acting? I think you're tired. The silence stretched again. Not as tension, but recognition. Will looked up. You know the scariest thing? I don't know who I am. When the camera turned off, Keanu's reply was soft, steady. Then it's time to find out. Will didn't respond, but something in him collapsed. Quietly, he wasn't performing anymore. He was finally listening. The silence in the studio was no longer awkward. It was transformative. Will Smith looked up at Keanu Reeves, still reeling from everything said before. You know what Will said, voice lower now. People only love you because you don't talk. Keanu didn't blink. What if that's true? Then maybe if you spoke more, they'd see who you really are, and maybe they wouldn't like it. Keanu's reply was soft. You think love has to be loud to be real? Will stood halfway, then sat back, down, frustrated. I earned every bit of love I got, every cheer, every laugh. I fought for it. And what if I earned mine by stopping the fight? Keanu asked gently. The audience leaned and Will's jaw clenched. You hide behind metaphors. You speak in riddles. Keanu nodded. Or maybe I just got tired of performing pain for people who don't know what to do with silence. Will exhaled sharply. You think I like performing? I think you forgot who you were underneath it. Will pause, his eyes flicking between Keanu and the crowd. I don't even know anymore. Keanu leaned forward. Then maybe that's the question you've been avoiding. Will swallow hard. You don't get it. If I stop performing, I disappear. Or maybe, Keanu said, you return. Will looked up sharply. You ever feel like you're a character in someone else's movie? Keanu's gaze didn't waver. Every day until I decided to walk off set. Helena remained silent, barely breathing. Will's voice cracked. You know, what scares me? The idea that no one would care if I was just me. Keanu tilted his head. Then let's test it. Take the mask off right here, right now. Will laughed bitterly. You say that like it's easy. It's not. It's honest. Will stood. He turned to face the audience, then back to Keanu. I built a version of myself people admire, but I don't know if I admire him. Keanu stepped closer. Then maybe it's time to meet the version who doesn't need applause. Will looked at him, eyes glassy. Do you think he's worth meeting it? Think he's waiting? Will sat again, trembling slightly. I wanted to break you tonight. Wanted to prove you weren't this untouchable mystery. And Keanu asked calmly. Will sighed. I think I'm the one breaking. Keanu didn't move, didn't smile. Then you're finally getting honest. Will looked up, whispering, I forgot who I was before the fame. Keanu leaned forward, his voice like a warm echo. Then, let's remember together. Will Smith sat in silence, jaw tight, breathing uneven. Then he spoke. You want the truth? I didn't invite you here because I admire you. Keanu stayed quiet. Will looked down. I invited you because I wanted to beat you. The audience froze. I've spent years watching people love you for being quiet. I scream bleed sweat for the crowd and you, he pointed, you just exist and they love it. Keanu didn't react. I hated that Will continued because I felt like if I stopped trying, I'd vanish. Keanu nodded softly, trying what Will's voice cracked trying to be. Enough the words hung in the air like a confession. No one dared interrupt I perform, because I don't trust silence, Will said in silence. I hear the fear, the doubt, the stuff I've been running from since I was a kid. Keanu leaned forward slightly. And what happens? If you stop running, Will laughed bitterly. I don't know. Maybe I collapse. Keanu's reply was gentle. Then maybe it's time to collapse. Will stared at him stunned. You're saying fall apart? I'm saying it, and stop pretending you're not already breaking. Will's hand covered his mouth. His shoulders trembled slightly. Then he spoke again. I missed recital birthdays. I told myself I was building a future for them. But really I was hiding in the work. Keanu nodded. You weren't building a life, you were building a disguise. Will's voice turned to a whisper. You ever wonder what you pass down to your kids besides them, honey? Keanu answered. We pass on what we don't heal? Will closed his eyes. I don't know how to forgive myself. It starts with honesty, Keanu said, and you're already doing that. Will open his eyes. Red but clear. You really think I can come back from all this? Keanu didn't hesitate. You don't need to come back, you just need to show up. A silence followed, but this time it felt different. Peaceful still. Will smiled through the tears. You talk like someone who's already buried the worst of himself. Keanu looked at him. I have, and I visit the grave often. Will exhaled. You said earlier the world doesn't need versions of me. Just me. Keanu nodded. The world needs the man, not the act. Will shook his head slowly. Wish someone had told me that before. Maybe, Keanu said, you weren't ready to hear it until now. They sat in the quiet. Two men. No roles. No masks. Just truth. Keanu Reeves sat still, but his eyes carried the weight of years. Will Smith looked at him quieter now. Why are you always so calm? He asked. Keanu exhaled slowly. Because I lost everything and didn't know how to keep breathing. Will sat up straighter. Keanu continued. When my sister died, the world went silent, but it wasn't peace, it was emptiness. I stopped smiling. I stopped feeling. People called it mystery, but really I was just broken. Will nodded slowly. And no one saw that. They saw what they wanted, Keanu said. But kindness was all I had left. That didn't hurt. Will's eyes welled up. That's why people trust you. You don't fake your pain. Keanu looked at him gently. And you do. Will didn't answer right away. I've faked everything. Strength, cool, forgiveness, Evan, joy. I gave people what they needed so I didn't have to show them what I didn't have. The air thickened. I cheated. Will said. I lied. I disappeared. Emotionally, all while smiling, apologizing with style. Keanu listened without judgment. You were trying to fix the image, he said. Not the wound. Will nodded slowly. I kept thinking if I worked hard enough, gave enough, they'd love me without the act, but they never saw me because I never showed me. Keanu leaned in. Maybe now you are. Will's voice dropped. Sometimes I look at my kids and I wonder what I passed down. My fear, my need to be perfect. We pass on what we don't heal, Keanu replied softly. Will wiped his eyes. I built a life people admire, but I don't admire the man whole lives in it. Keanu looked at him. Then maybe it's time to meet the man who doesn't need applause. I don't know who that is. He's still here, just quiet. Helena, nearly in tears, finally spoke. Will, what would you say to him? The man behind the image will hesitate. Then I'm sorry I left you behind. Keanu smiled soft, knowing that's a start. Another long silence passed, but this one felt healing. Will looked up again. How do you forgive yourself? Keanu answered, by staying by, not abandoning the parts of you that hurt. Forgiveness isn't a moment, it's presence. Will nodded. I think I've spent my whole life running from stillness. Keanu reached out, placing a hand on Will's shoulder, then stopped running. Will's eyes watered again. I think I just met myself. Keanu smiled gently. And you're still here. The studio was silent. Not the silence of awkwardness, the silence of something sacred just having unfolded. Will Smith sat still, eyes red but steady. Keanu Reeves was beside him, grounded, open, calm. Helena finally broke the quiet. Will, would you like to say something? Will stood up slowly, no bravado, no act, just breath. I brought Keanu here to prove something, to show the world that he's just a man. He looked at Keanu, but tonight he showed me that I'm just a man, and that's enough. He turned to the audience. I've lived my whole life chasing applause, thinking that's where love came from.